Welcome to NJIT Math Podcast today. My name is Tao Ling and I will try to explain to you what is an equation and what is a domain of equation. Now first of all, a equation is two mathematical expressions that are equal. So for example, 4 plus 1 is equal to 5. Now we have two expressions, 4 plus 1 and 5, and their relations are indicated by this equal sign. Okay, so this is an equation. Two mathematical expressions that are equal is an equation. Okay, so this is a pretty simple concept. But however, we are most concerned about equations with variables, and here we'll talk about an equation with a single variable. Let's say x plus 1 is equal to 4. Now we want to talk about something that's pretty important for an equation. It's a domain. Well, in order to solve an equation, we first of all we have to know under which circumstances the equation makes sense. So the domain will be the intervals for x where both sides of the equation make sense. Means both sides of the equation are defined. So in order to know what's defined, we should know what's undefined. Now, we know two things that are undefined. One is any fractions, for example, 1 over 0. If the denominator is 0, then the equation is undefined, does not exist. That's another, does not exist or undefined. Okay, those are all the same notations to say that it doesn't make sense. So first of all, so when the denominator is 0, you got an undefined equation, undefined mathematical expression. And the second case is when you have a square root of a negative number, for example, square root of -1. This is not a real number, so it does not exist or undefined. Okay. So that means when you have a square root of x, for example, then the x cannot be negative, or x has to be greater or equal to 0. Okay, this is when it's defined. Okay, now we know that the two cases that an expression is undefined. One is the denominator is 0, and the other case is when you have a square root of a negative number. Now once we know that if the equation is not undefined, then it's defined. So let's show you through an example. 2 is equal to 5 minus 1. Okay, what is the domain of this equation? Well, where is it undefined? Well, we know that 2 is always defined, but 5 over x minus 1, the denominator cannot be 0. So if x minus 1 is equal to 0, then this is undefined. Undefined, or does not exist. Sorry. If we solve this, this will equal to x is equal to 1. Right? If x is equal to 1, then the equation is undefined. So that means the domain is x does not equal to 1. Okay? Understand this logic? If we can find where it's undefined, then we take out that point. The rest will be defined. Okay? So the domain is x does not equal to 1. Now let's try another question. Is x minus 2 is equal to square root of x. Now let's look at the left side. X minus 2 is equal to square root of x. Well, we know that on the right side it's undefined. It's only defined when x is greater or equal to 0. This is when it's defined. Okay? That will mean, and on the left side, x minus 2 is always defined because it's neither a fraction nor a radical expression. So then the domain will simply just be x is greater or equal to 0. That's the domain. Okay? And one last example would be square root of x minus 1 is equal to 0. When we encounter an expression like this, well, we'll look at the right side. 0 is always defined. What about square root of x minus 1? Well, we know that a radical expression, a square root expression is defined when the inside is greater or equal to 0. So that means we can set x minus 1 is greater or equal to 0. So if x minus 1 is greater or always bigger than 0, that means x is greater or equal to 1. And this be our domain. Okay? So that's all there is to say about domain for now. And thank you for watching and good luck in your study.